Premier League 2021-22 Preview Number 8, Everton. Guardian writers predicted position 8th, NB. This is not necessarily Andy Hunter's prediction, but the average of our writers' tips. Last season's position, 10th odds to win the league, via oddschecker, 101. To put it simply, we need to be competing at the top end of the league and to be winning trophies. Farhad Moshiri made clear what he expects from Everton when explaining in June why he had pushed through the appointment of Rafael Benitez as the club's 5th permanent manager in 5 years. There was also an undisguised brusqueness to the majority shareholders' comments that could be surmised as follows: "I know this is an unpopular choice, but Carlo Ancelotti has landed us in it. I've tried all manner of different coaches, none have worked, so stop moaning and get behind the team." The appeal and stated ambition would be understandable from a man who has invested about £500 million into Everton, although it sounds optimistic with a squad whose character has been openly criticised by a succession of managers and finished 10th last season under one of the most decorated of all. 5 years into Moshiri's reign and Everton find themselves back at square one yet again, only without the extravagant spending that inflated expectations under the sizable roll call of Benitez's predecessors. Several high earners have been removed from the wage bill, Theo Walcott, Yannick Bolasie and Bernard, but many more remain at a club in danger of breaching FFP regulations and overseeing the construction of a £500 million plus stadium at Bramley Moor Dock. Benitez, like Ancelotti, Marco Silva, Sam Allardyce and Ronald Koeman before him, has a considerable task to satisfy his employer's demands. And that is without having to overcome opposition from a section of the fanbase that cannot forgive or forget the small club jibe he made as Liverpool manager 14 years ago. It should be eventful, at least. Benitez's immediate predecessor was extremely fortunate to have managed Everton behind closed doors last season. There were successes under Ancelotti, a 7-game winning start to the campaign, excellent away results including a first win at Anfield in 22 years, the development of Ben Godfrey, but atrocious home form hold his pursuit of European football. Everton were a torturous watch in a finishing run that produced 3 wins from 13 games and culminated in a 5-0 drubbing by Manchester City that dropped them to 10th. The Italian, who would have been under greater pressure with a full crowd delivering its damning verdict, lucked out once more when Real Madrid invited him back. It was no wonder he initially didn't believe that Real's interest was genuine. With Ancelotti, however, went the stability and gradual rebuilding process Everton crave. He has bequeathed Benitez a decent defensive base, or at least one capable of absorbing pressure when on the back foot away from home, but the 3-time Champions League winner was unable to rectify the team's inability to take the game to opponents without losing solidity and balance. Tides turn quicker than Everton's central midfield, where injury derailed Allen's impressive start and Andre Gomes has struggled to recapture top form after his horrific ankle dislocation. It can only be hoped that the luckless Jean-Philippe Baman, who has had more Everton managers than starts since his £25 million arrival in 2019, finally finds the fitness that has eluded him. A new right-back remains a priority, and uncertainty surrounds the futures of James Rodriguez, a class but fragile influence, and Moise Kean, who spent last season on loan at Paris Saint-Germain. Everton have pedigree in attack and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison and one of the Premier League's most creative full-backs in Lucas Digne. They also have a manager with significant gaps to bridge between himself and the fans, plus Everton and the European contenders. The mere prospect of Benitez becoming the second man to manage Liverpool and Everton was enough to spark unseemly personal abuse and threats towards the Spaniard over the most controversial managerial appointment in Everton's history may have subsided since his 3-year contract was signed, and the club could get on with the business of another rebuild, but Benitez still faces a considerable task to win over an impatient and disgruntled fanbase. Beyond the obvious Anfield connection, there are questions over his style of play and whether, like his former adversarios Mourinho, his best days are behind him. What should not be in doubt is the 61-year-old's determination to silence his detractors and the dedication he will bring to a job in which the current managers of Real Madrid, Barcelona and the top-ranked international team in the world underwhelmed. As the early signings of Andros Townsend and Demarai Gray demonstrate, there is a pressing need to improve the service to Dominic Calvert-Lewin despite the 24-year-old coming off the back of his most productive season. Richarlison and James Rodriguez have more natural, crowd-pleasing ability than the England international, but with doubts over their futures, as well as their consistency, Everton's fortunes are more likely to be shaped by the centre-forward building on form that produced an impressive 21 goals in 39 outings last season. There is no faulting Farhad Mashiri's ambition or largesse at Everton, but more than 5 years after the British-Iranian billionaire first invested in the club, he remains a bewildering and erratic owner. He has ploughed about £500 million into Everton, propelled the club towards a new stadium and new era on the Liverpool waterfront, and presented a rare, outspoken voice among Premier League owners against a Super League fiasco. All credit in the bank as far as Evertonians are concerned. On his watch, however, the team have fallen even further from the Premier League elite, with instability, wasteful spending and poor managerial choices the hallmarks of his tenure. A narrative developed at the Euros that suggested Jordan Pickford was having such a fine tournament because England fans gave him the backing that was lacking among Evertonians. It was, and is, absolute nonsense. Pickford was widely criticised last season, not least by his former manager Carlo Ancelotti, during a troubled start when his concentration levels wavered and several routine shots squeezed past him. His form and focus in the second half of the season improved considerably and were recognised at club level long before the Euros. It was possible to gauge how much Everton missed their crowd last season by the stark contrast in results home and away. 11 games and 37 points were won on the road, but 9 defeats at Goodison equaled the worst home return in the club's history. Pickford, Richarlison and Rodriguez, providing he stays, will hear their names reverberate around the stadium, but given the new manager's history, the anti-Liverpool rhetoric will be cranked up should things go awry. The Good, one of the most atmospheric and historic grounds in the country. Every game at Goodison is precious, with the clock now ticking on its existence. The bad part of Goodison's charm is also part of its problem, with obstructed views, tight concourses and poor facilities rendering it out of date. Everton's crest dates back to 1938, give or take a few modifications, when Secretary Theo Kelly created a design to be used on official club ties. It was not introduced to the playing kit until 1978. Kelly's design included Prince Rupert's Tower, a village lock-up located on Everton Brow, and the club's motto Nil Satis, Nisi Optimum, nothing but the best is good enough. I'm not supposed to admit this, but Benitez is doing a good job, isn't he? Even Carlo won at Anfield. Benitez out. Get up, Richarlison. Will we ever win the League Cup? Unfunny foam creatures have never caught on at Everton, thankfully, but the tradition of a toffee lady throwing sweets to the crowd before kick-off is alive and well.